Please join me in welcoming Rose.
You think I can speak loud enough? Okay. I was told I have to use a mic. Hi. I'm so I prefer not to talk to big crowds. So when I ask a question, I'm telling you it's not going to be rhetorical. I'd love a response. So be quick in responding and help with those interactions, because it really helps. Pete got this new little gadget, so I can now control the little PowerPoint here. But got it. Point it that way. Oh, see. These are my boys, Justin and Christian. So Justin is my son, who's my college-age child, and Christian's at East. Woo! In 2005, my then husband Rick and I took this class called Financial Peace University, and it's by Dave Ramsey. So has anyone ever taken that? Yeah? And living by those principles, I'm telling you, living by those principles changed my life. We began to live with a lifestyle that talked about only having debt with mortgage. So any non-mortgage debt was unacceptable in our household. You saved up money in a sinking fund to buy a car. You did all these things, and that really changed my life. And the whole idea of financial planning became exciting to me when we began to live by a plan. So today, I hope to be able to share some of that with you. Found this quote that I found adorable as I was reading different articles to prepare for this. It says, every woman needs to have a solid financial plan, whether she's working or not. And ladies, a man is not a financial plan. As much as you think your hubbies, for those that have hubbies, is your financial plan, he's not. And so you need to be involved right there with him in thinking through some of those things, or having your own little side gig, side hustle to be able to help you plan financially. Just for kicks, I did this little research that got me thinking about, okay, so what is the worth of a woman who stays at home? So I did a little research, and I went onto salary.com. And for all of you who stay at home or maybe have a side business at home but let's just take the home piece, right? So if you do laundry, cook, you drive your kids around, you manage the household, how much do you think of an annual income salary.com assigned to that? Priceless. Yep, for all of it together. Give me a number. 100? 160? 125? Anybody else? 85? 162,000. Look at you, Lori. 106, that your time, your energy, and it was not just based on what you do, it was also based on the fact that you give your husbands the ability to be able to invest in his job, in his career, and all of those things have value. So everybody give yourself a round of applause. You are $162,000 annual income women. Yeah, lots of giggling. I don't know that you believe that, right? But you are. You're worth it. You're worth the time, and you're worth that energy. Let's talk about principles of money. I went the wrong way, didn't I? Principles of money. If you had to pick 3 things that were the top principles of money, what would they be? Anybody? Tell me a principle of. Remember, I'm not really rhetorically speaking. Like I really want your interaction. Say that again. Don't spend more than you make. Put away savings. Invest. Anybody else? Yep. And you know what? All of those things come down to, I've got to learn how to do this. All of those things come down to 3 words: spend, save, and give. And those are the 3 buckets that we're going to kind of focus on today. Thought it would be a little bit fun to talk about it in terms of your children, because you're moms of preschoolers, and maybe some have older, some have younger. I thought we would divide it up into buckets of how we teach our children in different age groups. So the first age group we're going to talk about is preschool and kindergarten. As we go through the different age groups, I want you to make sure that you keep in mind that each age group needs to be taught, or each child needs to be taught individual lessons. Why? Because each child has a different character, and they're going to learn things a little bit differently. So I want you to keep that in the grid in the back of your mind as you're thinking about your children. For example, Justin's always been tight-fisted, right? So we had to teach Justin how not to be so tight-fisted and hold on to his money and not be a giver to anything. Christian, on the other hand, if he had a quarter, it would burn a hole in his pocket because he would find somebody to spend it on, something to spend it on, to leave it somewhere because it didn't matter to him. So I had two different personality types, and we had to figure out how are you going to teach him these lessons, and so make sure that you keep your children in those in the grid when we're talking about these different things. The first thing is use a clear jar for kids in the kindergarten and preschool category. Why a clear jar? Because it's visual. They can see their coins building up. They can see a dollar bill through there. When our kids were young, we had literally a save, a give, and a spend jar. They were just plastic Tupperware jars. They were, they were no big deal, but they were clear. The kids saw through them, and I made them put pictures in it. So if they were saving, remember one time Justin was saving for a frog to put into the aquarium. He put a picture of a frog in there. And so he knew he was saving for that frog, right? And so there's a visual component to that. Talk them through the whole concept of what save, give, and spend means. At their age, I don't know, what's a spend for a kindergartner? Candy, when you go to the grocery store, right? So when you go to the grocery store, they're like, Ma, can I have that? Well, did you bring your money with you? Okay, so next time, let's put a quarter in your pocket, and let's do that when you come. You don't have to buy it for them, right? They have their own little pieces that they can begin thinking about money, or and don't do the loan thing. There's something about that child taking money and giving it to the cash to the attendant. Set an example. Children don't do what you say; they do what you do, right? We've learned that. Have you learned that? Yeah, it doesn't really matter what we say, they do what we do. Little eyes are watching you. Money habits are formed by the time that they're 7 years old. Can you believe it? That doesn't mean you can't change their perception, but a lot of habits are formed because they're watching you. They're watching you slap that plastic. They're watching you argue about money. They're watching you, the way you interact. So set a healthy example from the beginning, and then show them that stuff costs money. How do you show them? That example that I said before. Take that jar or take a few coins. Hey, we're going to Target today. You've been saving for X, Y, Z. Take that money with you. Let's see if we can find it. Or make them go through the actions, showing them. Having them participate in the process is much easier and says 10,000 more things than, a 5-minute lecture about, that costs money and I can't buy it for you. If they have the money and they have it, they're willing to spend it, that's great. Funny that you should ask that, because in the next slide, thanks for that lead-in. Did you read these slides? For elementary school and middle school, we'll talk about that allowance first. It's called commission. It's not called allowance. And allowance is what I asked you guys on the survey, right? Does anybody get an allowance? And that they can, that's not earned? Well, as a young child, you don't want to teach them that. You don't get an allowance just because you're breathing or just because you're part of the family. You get an allowance because you've earned it. It's called a commission. Call it commission. I know that's really weird, right? But from a sales perspective, it's commission. If you did your chores, I'm going to give you a commission. You get a commission, and explain the difference between, or, call it whatever you want, but make sure it's based on the fact that they produce tasks and the fact that money is earned. Rachel Cruz, who is a financial personality, Dave Ramsey's daughter, put out a book called Smart Money, Smart Kids. It's an excellent book if you want a resource. She goes through a great job of explaining what commissions are and how to do it with tasks and breaks it down for you. So there's a resource for you. Let's go back up to the first bullet point. Show the opportunity. When you're a middle schooler and I don't know, you want a new set of sneakers? You're really dying for that set that everybody has, right? So it's okay, moms, to say, I have a budget for the sneakers, and this is the amount of money we're able to spend. But if you'd like to supplement my budget and upgrade your sneakers, would you use your money? I have someone in our small group who shared a story with me once. Is Cindy Corson in the room? Okay. Her parents, and it's probably her or her brother, I don't know which one, but they had these budgets for their kids. And so Mr. Ansa told me about a time where they said, this is your budget. She upgraded her shoes to a different pair, and she took really good care of them because they were really expensive. So it wasn't mom buying $75 Nikes for her or whatever, whatever shoes she wanted, but it was her supplementing it, and they were taking much better care of it. So try that as a strategy to show them the opportunity. Listen, if you spend on this, then if you use your money on the shoes, then you're not going to have it on the for the video games. But that's okay. You can make a choice. You don't have to have the $75 sneakers. Make a choice, but show them the opportunities that exist when you make choices with money. Avoid impulse buys. Back to middle schoolers. Oh my gosh, Mom, that dress is so cute. I need it. It's so cute. I can't walk out. It's on sale. I need it today, right? I'm not going to find it again. Well, that's an impulse buy. So how do we talk to our daughters? How do we talk to our sons about impulse buying? I don't know. Have you ever been faced with that? No, just me? Well, it's real. And actually, do you ever impulse buy? Right? Our kids see that. No? But they see that. So how do we temper that? How do we show them? How do we attack it? Maybe you want to set some guidelines to say, hey, look, if it's over a certain dollar amount and you don't have it with you, I'm not going to spot you that money in middle school. Like, listen, you can come back if it's here tomorrow. And if you've had 24 hours to think about it and you still really want it, I'll bring you back. But I don't know that you need it that badly. It's just an extra pair of shoes or it's an extra dress, whatever, right? And then stress the importance of giving. Studies have shown that giving is not really about the people who get the gift. It's more about us, the giver. And that's just a good life principle. So as early as you can start them thinking about giving, that giving little jar that we had in kindergarten and in elementary school that changes, in middle school that changes even yet. Maybe that's when you introduce there's a family in need. Maybe that's where they pick a gift from the Christmas tree. When my kids were little and they were in karate, we made them pick a name from the karate Christmas tree. And we had to first shop for that gift, and they did it with their money before we started any other Christmas shopping for the season. And that was just to show that this is important to us as a family. We want to be able to support other kids, and part of your commission has to impact those lives around you because there's other people that are in need. Did I go the right way? Yeah. All right, let's go to teenagers. So listen, all of this is kind of a snowball effect. What they learn is foundational as kindergartners, and then what they learn in elementary school and middle school keeps building on this foundation. And again, you're looking through it through the grid of your child. Which one of these pieces do they need to know? I remember one time Justin being really upset with me because we were a little bit more lenient with Christian giving, although he gave inappropriately all the time. Justin needed to learn that lesson, and he was really upset with us one day, but we had to explain to him that this is a piece that you need to learn as a lifelong skill. And so it's okay to treat them differently so that your children get the lessons that they need to shape their heart and their behavior to move forward. Teach them contentment. Anybody ever see those weird shows on TV like The Sweet 16 where they spend $100,000 and that kind of crazy stuff? Listen, our kids are on social media, on TV. That phone gives everybody that grid of comparison. And that is the worst place for our kids to be. How do we talk to them about being content? You have to find ways to teach them about being content and not to compare with what somebody else has. Contentment starts at the heart. And what we talk to our kids about, the value that they have. Hey, listen, I know that Camry in our driveway is really old, but it's going to get you from A to B. And you don't have to have a brand new car because I know that this one will do it for you. Give the responsibility of a bank account. I don't think that in this day and age, this is such a big deal, but I want to talk about it in a little bit different ways. My kids, I've realized, swipe their debit cards constantly because that's how they shop. They shop on Amazon. Oh my gosh, Christian, I think, has had an Amazon account for 2 years. It's the craziest thing because that's the day and age we live in. But how do we teach them to use cash? Cash is really important. Matter of fact, I thought I arrived about a month ago because Christian goes, Mom, feel it. When you feel that cash, it is different. When you have to pay, it is different than swiping the card. So teach them to deal with cash because it's too easy to do the whole virtual thing. I remember one day, this was this big aha for him going, I got all of these fees from the bank. And I'm like, well, what happened? Well, his checking portion was getting too low, and he must have swiped, and there wasn't enough. And so not only did they not transfer it automatically, he got a fee. And he's like, but the money was in the other account. I go, yeah, but that's your job. So some lessons, natural lessons, are good to be learned the hard way, but some are really difficult. When we talk about accounts, there used to be a family that lived in Buckingham, and the mom shared something really interesting with me once. She said that when their kids were about in middle school, they started this program with them where they gave them money every quarter. And that money was to get them through school lunches, outfits, haircuts. Then when they got to middle school, it became every 6 months. When they got to one of the years in high school, they funded them once a year. Their kids never asked them for money for shoes, clothing, for school lunches because they had it and they had to learn how to budget it. How cool is that? Teaching them to do that when they're in your home, under your roof, where they can make mistakes and you can guide them. I thought that was fantastic. My sister used to give her kids money for school lunches, and she said, you know what? That refrigerator is always stocked with stuff for lunches. So if you choose to make your lunch, you can use that money for your pleasure. And so it kind of teaches them a little bit about responsibility, taking care of themselves, and yet saving that money for something that they really want. Get them to save for big purchases. When you're in the teenage years, what are big purchases? What is it? A new pair of Vans. iPhone. Oh my gosh, those are big purchases. Video games. And those are considered big purchases for them, right? We're not talking about, you can probably start talking about college. I think sometimes that, depending on where they are, it doesn't really compute very much. But big purchases for them, keep that in mind, are not what we consider probably big purchases at this time. Although, one of the lessons that you can talk about as they're teenagers before they get to college, and I think, Mary, you did this with your daughters, with, hey, this is our budget for school. You pick a school. But here's the deal. If it costs more than this allotted budget, then you need to find a way to fund that. So how do we get from, buying the video games and iPhone to getting to the college thing? And that's your challenge for the 4 years of high school, to say, how do I get them there? Be strategic about it. Maybe this is a time where you're talking about cars. I made a deal with Christian that we would buy him a car, and as soon as he paid half of it off, it would become his. He's still working on it. He still hasn't paid half of it off. But he is really eager for that car to be his, to say, it is my car. So when we saw a car, it was a used car, we went and he negotiated. He had to, he was scared to death, but he had to talk. It was actually Susan McGonigal was selling her car before she left, but he didn't know I knew her. and it was a good experience because, she's so nonchalant, but he had to drive it. He had to talk to her. He had to negotiate the price. He had to do all that because that's part of the process of learning to be an adult. He's going to be in college next year. And if he can live in a dorm himself, he should be able to negotiate on his own, right? So how do we teach them those simple little skills as they grow? Get them to budget. Our kids love the phone. There's an app called Every Dollar, and it's a Dave Ramsey app. I'm a big Dave Ramsey fan, if you can't tell. Dave Ramsey has this Every Dollar app. It is an app on your phone. You budget on it. You track your costs. It'll even link up to your bank accounts. It's a great app. Get them a simple app and get them to budget. And you're thinking, what the heck are they going to budget on? Well, I can tell you that when Justin serves and he can make, $200 in a night, I want him to budget. If he doesn't budget, that money is going to go. If you don't budget your money, it's going to go somewhere before you tell it where to go. And it will get spent. And so even the simplest of things, the habits that we can begin forming with them are terrific. Introduce them to the magic of compound interest. And I didn't say, you know, tell them to do it, tell them to invest, but introduce them to that concept of, you can't really use a savings account because, that's not really compound interest these days that is significant. But but you're probably thinking, oh my gosh, I can't even get them to brush their teeth or brush their hair or whatever. How am I going to teach them about this, and how about being savvy? And I'm not talking about big concepts in terms of, oh, you got to start investing, but introduce the concept of how it works. The more you put away, the earlier, the better, and even for simple things. And don't forget to help them figure out how to make money. So one of the concepts we're talking about here is, budgeting and money and all this kind of good stuff. Talk to them about their jobs. Try to be strategic with them. Where are you working? Why? What are you going to get from it? What do you think you can learn there? We were putting together a resume the other day for Justin for an internship, and I said, so what did you learn as a server? And it cracked me up that he actually said that he learned communication skills. And I thought, for a guy, that's true. because Justin's like, less words, the better. And so the fact that he has to communicate with guests and he has to ask them what they want and everything's okay and all that kind of good stuff, and he has to communicate the contents of what's in that dish was huge for him. And I didn't even think that he would learn that, but he did. So, last slide. Maybe this is a little far-fetched for some of you, but college-age and adulting children. I know that you thought it was going to end at teenage, but you continue to be a parent, even in college, even through the adulting years. And how do you talk to them about saving for bigger purchases, like the down payment of something, an apartment lease? So those are what you're trying to get to. How are you going to talk through the college years we're talking about that with Justin going, hey, look, I want you to have all the options when you graduate, but you won't have these options unless you continue to make smart choices. Talk about job opportunities, like I said before. What are you looking to be? Where do you want to work? What state do you want to work in? Why? All that kind of good stuff. Strongly encourage long-term savings and the magic of interest. Did you know that if you put $1,000 into a bank account, 40 years later, if it's at 6%, you'll have $10,200. After 40 years on $1,000. If you put $1,000 away for 40 years at 18%, which is, okay, let's do 12 because that's more reasonable, you'll have $93,500. That's a lot of money for $1,000. That's the beauty and the magic of compounding interest. That's about investing, and that's a simple way to begin teaching. So one of the things that we've already started to talk to Justin about, hey, when you get that first job, it's a non-negotiable that you need to put into that 401k at the very beginning, because that's what we're talking about. The earlier you can put away, the better. And we're not talking big sums. Like when we talk about investing, I think people think that you have to have thousands and hundreds of dollars. If you do small sums over time, it really does add up. So I'd encourage you to do that. Talk about your observations of how you have observed them. What have you observed about your child, and how do they behave around money? Talk about that. Now's not the time that you need to be teaching those lessons outright, putting them through that grid of, I need to teach you this because you're really tight-fisted. But you're talking about, hey, this is what I've observed. Tell me how that feels, or tell me how you'd like to change that. And then share what you've learned. This is your time to share with them as adults. What have you learned? What's worked? What hasn't? By applying some of these practices, I'm telling you, you can change your family tree. And I'm not just saying that. I'm really serious. You can change the way that you think about money. You can change the way that your children think about money and be wise about money. There's a verse found in Hebrews that I absolutely love. It's called Hebrews 12:11. It says, "For the moment, all discipline seems painful rather than pleasant, but later it yields the peaceful fruit of righteousness to those who have been trained by it." The reason I love this verse is because, I think we live this as moms all the time, right? Discipline of any kind is hard. I'm trying to lose weight. It is the darnest hardest thing. It is super hard. And I know that if I can stick with it, that I will see fruit, and I will see that weight coming off. But it's hard. It's like that with money. It's like that with, I think, anything that we think about, really. And that if we can teach our children that discipline, that they will be able to reap from it. The part of this verse that really struck me, though, recently, was the piece that the ending that says, "For those who are willing to be trained by it." And I thought about that, and I thought, dear Lord, am I willing to be trained by that? Are you willing to be trained by it? Because I love the survey results that some of you took. Some of us still talk about the fact that, these are the things that we want to achieve. And if you think about you and think about all of these things that we want to teach our children in these different age categories, how do you fit in? Did you learn those things in elementary, kindergarten, and middle school? Those foundational things that now you're teaching teenagers? Have you ever been taught your child something and you go, oh, wait, I should tell myself that first? Like you catch yourself? As a homeschooling mom, I remember teaching my kids and going, wow, the second time around, I have learned this much better than I did the first time. I don't even remember it the first time, but it has so much more meaning. And so I think just like school curriculums, right? You learn something, and the next grade you learned it again, but go a little deeper. And the next year you learned it again, but go even deeper. I think God has a sense of humor kind of doing that with our kids. So we've learned something as we were children, and now we have kids and we're teaching them, and that's our opportunity to go deeper and deeper. So take a look at that list if you took notes, or if you didn't. Look at that list and challenge yourself to say, have I been trained by some of these principles I want to teach my children? How well am I doing at living that out? So let's do a little flip and talk about that in terms of ourselves. The principles of a healthy financial plan still exist in terms of spend, save, and give for us. Nothing's changed. They're the same thing as for our kids. It's just that we see it differently. And I'd like to say that we should change the order. We should be at a place where we are thinking about giving, saving, and then spending. And I know that's a really different thought. In order to do this, you have to be on the same page. The same page as your spouse, same page as if you're a single mom, as an accountability partner. So if you are a single mom, we have any single moms in here? It would be great if you had an accountability partner. It's a difficult thing to do it all on your own. When I talk about the same page, in every single relationship, there is somebody who is that nerd, who loves the spreadsheet and pencil. I'm going to give me every receipt because I'm going to track it to the dime and, all that kind of good stuff. And then there's a free spirit, like, you do it. I don't really care. Well, it takes both of you. You need both of you involved in that process to get it for it to work. And so oftentimes, I think when you talk about a budget and you talk about somebody going, what do you want me to do? It doesn't work. So try to talk about it why. I don't care if you're the nerd or if you're the free spirit. Talk about why you'd want to see something. Lots of you on your surveys said that you needed to plan, and that you wanted to plan, that you wanted to see the numbers, that you wanted to see the goals, that you wanted to save more. Think about that verse that we just talked about. Why is it that you're not planning for those things? Why are you not being trained by? Maybe you've been wanting to see the numbers for years. Where can you challenge yourself in this new year to say, hey, I'm going to do things differently this year. I'm going to see the numbers, I'm going to save for it, and I'm going to work together with hubby on some of these things. So communication is key, because money communication is probably the number one factor of relationships. In relationships that there are shared finances, and many of you, actually 97% of you say you share finances with your hubby, which is really, really amazing. And I'll tell you why. Because when you share finances with the person you live with, you talk about them differently than you would if they're not shared. Recently, in the financial peace class that we taught this last fall here at Covenant, we had a couple who was from our community, and they did not share finances. It was always hers and his. And their life changed in the 13 weeks that we were together. And I almost want to break down in tears when I think about them, because it was amazing, the things that they shared with us, that they learned about each other, the transparency that they had, and the conversations they had, because it was no longer, okay, you take care of this and I'll take care of this. It was joint. It changed their lives. But they had never thought about doing that because they got married later in life, and they were protecting themselves. And so shared finances is big. You argue less when you have shared finances. So I want to talk about the fact that how we put these principles that we've learned into some buckets. The first bucket I want to talk about is budgeting. It's not a dirty word. It's not. It's a scary word if you've never done it, but it's telling your money where to go. It's being proactive. Like I said before, if you don't tell your money to go, it's going to go somewhere. You're gonna get to the end of that month, you're gonna go, where the heck did this go? Where did I spend it? If you don't tell it where to go, it's gonna get used. At the church, we use a zero-based budget. And that's what you should do at home too. That means you're telling every dollar where to go at the end of the month. It's a zero. That means your savings bucket, your investment bucket, your giving bucket, every bucket is allocated. So at the end of the month, every dollar you bring in zeroes out. Does that make sense? Sounds intimidating, zero-based budget, but it's not. Just allocate for every single dollar. Some of you said in your surveys that you want to save for vacations, that you want to save for, I got really excited about this, date nights. That's so cool. I mean, wouldn't it be great if you can allocate those money, a certain set of money? Why is it that we would be willing to spend $75 on a pair of shoes for our kids, but wouldn't want to save that for a date night with hubby? Tell your money where to go so it's not impulsively gone at the end of the month. When you're spending, are you setting up guardrails for hubby and you, or with your accountability partner? Before I suggest you make certain rules. Hey, before I spend $200, I need to okay it with somebody else. And maybe we're going to wait 24 hours. That's okay to do. Before I purchase a new car, have you figured out how it fits into the budget? Did you take a look, or you just feel like a new one and there you go? How about your emergency fund? Have you built up an emergency fund for those things? One of the guardrails is we don't touch that emergency fund. Only if it's an emergency are we going to touch it. And so agree ahead of time. What are emergencies? Is it when the heater breaks? Is it when the car, what are those emergencies? I remember, actually Mary just told me last week as I was telling her about this, that for a long time, she had no idea, or I shouldn't say any idea. She didn't participate as actively as she would have liked in the financial process. She had no idea. She had no idea. And it's interesting because you think, oh my gosh, Mary, she knows all things. Like, how can she not be involved in this process? And so it made me think about, that verse in Proverbs that talks about a noble woman, and we love that whole chapter of she's a jewel, and it's because she sews and she does all these things. I don't think God would be really upset with us if we flipped that and said, in some of our cases, that's our husband, that we depend on him. He's that jewel that he goes out and he sews at work, he invests. And so how well are we partnering with him in the money spending? I love the fact that most of you do are involved in the budgeting process at home. That is super. I'm glad that I think it was like 30% are aware. I would challenge you to become more involved. It's good to be aware, but be involved in the decisions. I know this sounds like a crazy concept, but you should be having monthly budget meetings. Hey, look, next month, February, is Valentine's Day. Can we budget to have a dinner together? We also have 2 birthdays coming. What's that going to look like? And where are we going to use that money? I talked before about cash. Oh, right? Try using cash. See how that works for you. I know, listen, that concept that I talk about with my kids of swiping their card, it is way too easy to swipe a card and not feel the cash. Go back to the basics. Have a cash envelope for things that you struggle with. Maybe it's not every category, but maybe your area of self-control lies in the area of eating out. So you'll say, okay, I have this much to eat out this month. Put that in an envelope, and that is your envelope for the month. If you have some left at the end, great, put it toward the next month. But figure out where are those areas that give you problems and hone in on them. Create a plan around them. Maybe it's entertainment money. And listen, you have to have a little slush fund for yourself, right? Like fund money, you have to do that. So when you're talking about budgets, it's not supposed to be all completely strict. Last thing I want to talk about is this whole idea of a legacy drawer. When you're talking about finance planning, and I know that most of you have investments. Some of you want to be more involved in investments according to the survey that you guys took. What are you going to do with all that information? If you're the ones, I think there was 23% of you who took care of the bills for your family. If something were to happen to you, at work we call this the hit by a bus rule, right? If you were hit by a bus, who would know where to find your stuff? They have to know. So if you take care of all those finances, the 23% of you who do, where is somebody going to know where to find your passwords, your email passwords, your, I don't know, Pico, whatever it is, to make life easier? Do you have that written down somewhere? Put it in this legacy drawer. A legacy drawer consists of not only things like, estate planning or wills or that kind of thing, but financial accounts. It could be funeral instructions. It could be letters that you want written and left for loved ones. But it also should be the very basics. It should be your tax returns. It should be your passwords, all the things. Why do we want a legacy drawer? This tells your, nobody told me I was not on a legacy drawer. What? You guys are all so nice. Oh, yeah, well, this is a legacy drawer slide. You want to leave, along with a legacy of you want to leave all these things to prepare somebody when you're no longer there to give them the information. So take the time, create a drawer, life insurance, auto insurance, all the things that you touch or your hubby touches. Do it together. Create this. You know what? This is one of the best ways you could tell your family members you love them. This is my love language. I just thought of a sixth one. I don't know. But if you want more information about legacy drawers, I'm sure you can look it up online. But it's critical. The last thing I just want to mention is living with financial peace is really critical. And one of the ways, as a follower of Jesus, that I have discovered of living in financial peace is inviting Jesus into that process. And so invite him into your process. You know where those struggles are. It may be, as you're teaching a child, it may be interacting with your husband about your finances. But do that. There was a time, about 3 years ago, maybe 2 years ago, that I was able to identify that I was no longer dreaming. And I realized I needed to. See, when I told you at the very beginning I had a husband that we went through financial peace with, life happened. I didn't plan on it. My son was diagnosed with cancer. Life happened. My other son went on to college, and he struggled. Life happened. And somewhere in there, Rick decided he didn't want to be with me. And so life happened. I would not be able to be doing, I'm not telling you that I don't struggle from day to day with finances, because it's one of the reasons I love financial peace that keeps me on the road of walking the straight and narrow as I teach it, every fall with Max. But if I didn't learn those basic principles and wasn't living them, I wouldn't be able to be in the sound mind, literally, that I am today, because I was able to learn principles that I'm able to apply and live and teach my children. So if I hadn't learned healthy financial methods, I think I'd be struggling more than I am now. It's a discipline, ladies. It's a marathon. As a matter of fact, I was talking to somebody walking in, and she said, "Oh my gosh, you know that my husband and I, it took us 10 years to really tackle our finances and to really get on the same page." It is a lifelong struggle. It is not something that you're going to lick today and be golden. Every stage of your life, every area, every time your kids change ages, which is all the time, and you get older and your finances change, your house changes, whatever, it's going to be different. It's a marathon, ladies, but you can do this. And so my encouragement today to you is If I were to say, tackle it with your husband if you have one. It's really important to be on the same page and try to live debt free. It would be amazing if you were to live in a lifestyle that you only had mortgage debt. And I know that that seems impossible in Bucks County, but it's possible. And you know what? You want to live that way to leave that legacy for your kids. You do. You want to leave that legacy for kids. You work too hard every single day. So, in the words of Dave Ramsey, because he says all these weird sayings, but one of them that I love is that if you can live like no one else today, you can live and then give like no one else someday. So, tackle that. New year, new you. Make that a priority. Okay?